Imagine you just killed a man. Not an animal, not in a hunt, a person, someone from your own tribe. Maybe he attacked you first, maybe it was over food, maybe you just lost control. It doesn't matter now because he's lying in the dirt and he is not getting back up. There are no police, there are no judges, there is no prison to send you to. There is only you, the body, and the 30 people who saw the whole thing. So what happens to you now? To understand the answer, you have to forget almost everything you know about crime. Today, when someone is killed, a machine switches on around it. Detectives arrive. Evidence is bagged. A stranger in a uniform takes you away. And months later, other strangers decide your fate in a room full of rules. None of that existed. For most of human history, there was no institution standing between you and the people you had just hurt. There was only the group. And the group was everything. You have to picture how small that world really was. A typical band was maybe 20 to 50 people. You knew every single one of them. You knew their voices in the dark, the sound of their footsteps, the way they laughed. The person lying in front of you was not a stranger. He was someone you had hunted beside, someone who had shared meat with you when you had none. In a group that small, everyone was connected to everyone, by blood, by marriage, by years of depending on each other to stay alive. And that is the first thing that made killing so different back then. It was not an abstract crime against society. Society was standing right there, watching. Every person in that circle had just lost something real. A brother, a husband, a hunter. The whole group needed to survive the winter. When you killed one person in a band that small, you did not just end a life. You tore a hole in the middle of everyone's world at once. So before anyone thinks about punishment, something else happens first. They grieve. And this is where the old assumptions fall apart because we tend to imagine ancient humans as cold, brutal, barely feeling anything at all. The evidence says the opposite. At a cave called Shanidar in the mountains of what is now Iraq, archaeologists found the remains of people who had died more than 50,000 years ago. These were not even our species. They were Neanderthals, and they had been buried with care, their bodies arranged deliberately, one of them so old and injured that the group must have fed and protected him for years before he died. Everywhere researchers look, they find the same signal. Bodies covered in red ochre, graves with tools placed beside the dead, food left for a journey nobody could see. The dead were not just dumped and forgotten. They were mourned. So the moment after a killing was not cold at all. It was raw. The group was in pain, and that pain is exactly what made the next part so dangerous, because now the group has a decision to make, and there is no book to look it up in. The simplest, oldest answer is revenge. The dead man had a brother, a father, sons. And in a world with no police to stop them, the people who loved him could simply do to you what you did to him. This is what anthropologists call a blood feud, and it appears in human societies all over the planet. An eye for an eye is not a poem. It was, for most of history, the actual mechanism of justice. But revenge has a terrible flaw. It rarely stops at one. You kill him, so his family kills you. Then your family kills them because now you are the one who was wronged. A single death can spiral into a chain of killings that burns through an entire community, year after year, until half the band is gone. In a group of 30 people, a blood feud is not just a tragedy. It is a threat to the survival of everyone. The whole group has a desperate interest in making the killing stop before it multiplies. So other answers evolved. One of them was payment. In many societies, a killer or the killer's family could offer something to the family of the dead, not to erase what happened, but to settle it. Gifts, tools, a share of every hunt for years to come. Sometimes even a person, a sister or a daughter, sent to replace the one who was lost. It sounds cold to us putting a price on a human life, but that price had a purpose. It gave the grieving family a path that was not more blood. It let the community exhale. And when that failed, when a person could not be paid for and could not be forgiven, there was a third path, and it was the most feared of all. Exile. They would simply cast you out. No goodbye, no supplies, no second chance. You would walk away from the only people on Earth who knew your name, into a landscape full of predators and rival groups completely alone. And here's the part we forget. For a human being 50,000 years ago, being alone was a death sentence. You could not survive the winter by yourself. You could not hunt large animals alone, could not stay awake to guard the fire, could not heal if you got sick. The group was not a comfort. The group was your body's life support. To be exiled was to be executed slowly by the world itself. But there was one more possibility, and it is the one that surprises people the most. Sometimes the group killed you themselves. Not in a rage, not one angry relative in the heat of the moment. A cold, collective decision. Anthropologists studying living hunter-gatherer societies in the 20th century recorded exactly this. Among the Kung people of the Kalahari, the researcher Richard Lee documented the story of a man who had already killed more than once, a man everyone had come to fear. The group did not put him on trial. They reached a silent agreement. And one day, a number of men from the band ambushed him together so that no single person could be blamed and no new feud could begin. The whole community pulled the trigger at once. That detail matters more than it seems. By acting together, the group turned a private killing into a public verdict. There was no one relative for the dead man's family to take revenge on, because everyone had done it. This is one of the oldest forms of law we know of, and it was not written down anywhere. It lived in the shared judgment of people who had watched a man become too dangerous to keep alive. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Were ancient humans violent? For a long time, people imagined our ancestors as gentle and peaceful, corrupted only later by civilization. But the data is harder than that. In some studied forager societies, the rate of death by homicide was startlingly high, higher than in many modern cities. Violence was not rare. What was remarkable was not that ancient humans never killed, it was that they built invisible tools to keep the killing from consuming them. And those tools were not weapons. They were social. Gossip, for one. In a small band, everyone talked, constantly, about everyone else. A person who was becoming aggressive, who bullied others or took more than their share, got a reputation long before they ever hurt anyone. Reputation was a warning system, and when talk was not enough, the group could act as one, exactly as they did with the man in the Kalahari. Anthropologists have a name for the way these tiny societies kept even their strongest members in check. They call it reverse dominance. The many quietly agreeing to control the few. So step back into that moment. You are standing over a body. 30 people are staring at you in the dying light. What happens next is not decided by a law or a judge or a prison. It is decided by them. By whether the dead man had powerful relatives. By whether you were liked or feared. By whether this was your first mistake or your last in a long line of them. By whether the group believes you can still be one of them, or whether you have become something they can no longer afford to keep. That is the strange truth about justice for almost the entire human story. It had no building, no uniform, no rulebook. It was a decision made face to face, by the very people who had watched it happen, weighing one life against the survival of everyone else. We built police and courts and prisons precisely so we would never have to stand in that circle again, and make that choice ourselves. But it is worth remembering that the circle came first. Long before there was any law carved into stone, there was a group of people standing around something terrible that had just happened, deciding together what a human life was worth. That was the first court. And you were standing in the middle of it.